Oh, thank you very much. Um, I've learned so much just listening to the experts that you pulled together. Um, I'm going to keep it very short so that we get something that draws perhaps together some of the strands of discussion we've had today. I'd begin with a personal experience, which many would have had if you live in the developing world, where you would have left your very nice home or hotel um, and gone into a slum. And I did that in Mumbai. And what I did was with a friend who took me house by house in this slum to visit some of the people who were there to ask some very simple questions. Where did they come from to arrive at the slum at the edge of Mumbai? What was their motivation? And what do they hope to get from this experience? And what you find is they are very much the same as all of us. They're there to create opportunity for their children, for the next generation. And they understand the hardship of where they are, but they've come to the edge of a great city where they believe the opportunity will be better. And in some ways, that reflects all of our stories, post-industrial revolution, where our forefathers and mothers would have left the fields to come into the big cities. And initially, those big cities were a magnet to draw everybody in. The thought was at some point they would become overcrowded and would become slums, which they did. London, New York, Paris were all slums. Um, but the interjection of prosperity somehow changes a slum into a great city. And the hope of all these people who are on the edge of these cities is that that will happen to them too. They will get employment, their children will get great opportunity, and their lives will be transformed. This magnet of cities, though, that we have all over the world today is an industrial model. And as we heard just now, how will it survive the digital era? Today, this magnet is a magnet, of course, for people. 70% will live there. It's a magnet for ideas. 80 to 85% of institutions of education, research, all the universities, the think tanks are in cities. It's a magnet for capital. Something like two-thirds of the world's money, GDP, is generated in these cities. So it's a powerful magnet in some ways. It's also a target for war. So when we fight each other, we bomb cities. And there are something close to 50, it's difficult to estimate, 50 to 100 cities that have never been properly rebuilt following a war. One other thing that is very clear, though, is we've been successful as a species moving to these cities, concentrating our efforts, our intellectual property and our thought processes to develop solutions. But in the process to do that, we would have almost asset stripped the rest of the planet, created the whole supply chains to supply these cities. So if you looked from afar, you would say that humanity placed a big bet to live in cities and to resource the rest of the planet to allow it to do so. And was that a successful bet or not? And we would argue, based on the peace, prosperity, and freedoms created, that it was. But actually, something like 70 to 80% of people live, of course, in the global south. 70, 80% of the cities are in the global south. And they are not really beneficiaries of the Industrial Revolution, the digital revolution, the information revolution that is underway already. So in some ways, we have created great success for about a third of the world's population, but not for the other two-thirds. And in the process of creating these great cities, which have been such a great success for those in them and those attracted to them, particularly in the north of the world, and as we take everything else, desertification and climate issues and other environmental issues are starting, of course, to make life untenable for everybody on the planet. You have to have some hope and belief. And part of the hope and belief comes, I believe, from the scientific changes that have happened. We heard today how many of the solutions are already there. We heard that Europe is planning over the next 25 to 30 years to reduce its energy consumption, its demand, to approximately half of what it is today. Now that takes science and technology, perhaps changes in consumption, and industrial behavior. But in the midst of a security conflict around the world on energy, Europe will consume half. That's a strategic move. And without science and technology, we couldn't have done that. So it shows there is hope. The other thing I thought was very interesting was how, in the face of desertification, China began a program in 1978 to build a Great Green Wall across China. That wall is, I understand, something like 4,500 kilometers and somewhere between 5 and maybe 50 kilometers wide. It's not complete, but it's near complete. And it's led to another wall being built across Africa of a green wall of 8,500 kilometers. You see, I think when you think about it, we have the capacity to solve every single issue, and we're capable of doing extraordinary feats of engineering using the science that we understand of how to do that and turn deserts into something that is green. But we do face the challenge, of course, of saying, will we do it in time? Because the certainty that we're facing, according to the IPCC report, is that we will cross 1.5C, of course, and we will cross 2C, and there's almost 100% chance that we will cross 2.5C. So then the question mark is, what does that actually mean? And if you read the huge IPCC report and you step back from it, it says there will be universal flooding, universal destruction of crops and food sources, destruction of value from industry and sectors. The manufacturing and agriculture of food will move across physical boundaries. There'll be a mass migration of people. The most affected are, of course, coastal areas, but also major cities. And the very tough part of the report, essentially, to digest, is that the global south would be devastated and the north would be distressed. There is a belief, therefore, that the north could survive this devastation. But of course, we know that's not true. It takes 100,000 to maybe a few million people to migrate from the south to the north to overthrow any regime in any democracy in the world. So our fates are completely politically interlinked. We are not capable of living separately, even if we think we can, even if the math said that the north will not be devastated. It will be devastated politically, and therefore it will get devastated. So our fates are completely interlinked in this process. In the work that we do in Force for Good, what we have done is look at the intersection of various tools to address this issue. And finance is one of those. Technology is one of those. As we heard earlier, 70% of the Sustainable Development Goals rely on technology. Policy is a major one that should never be underestimated, the ability to make change through policy. And then new business, commerce, industry, solutions, the private sector appetite to make profit. We estimate that solving the world's issues by transferring existing solutions across boundaries will generate value of approximately 15 trillion US dollars. But that cannot be unlocked without there being policy change such that the environment is conducive to that investment. But the opportunity is literally that big. Our next endeavor is to, this year, in September, and then in November for the final report, which we would love to do, of course, with IFORIA and UNFCCC, is at COP30 launch what we call the World Investment Plan. It takes the IPCC report and the SDGs and turns them into assets that have to be built. The world would have to build many dams to stop the flooding, many support systems around coastal cities, so much mitigation in terms of assets. Infrastructure would have to be rebuilt. Financial systems will have to be retooled to be completely digital. A lot of this will be hugely profitable. Some of it will be marginally profitable, and some of it will be unprofitable, but essential, without which the rest will not succeed. So this World Investment Plan should be a galvanizing force to see the opportunity in the challenges that we have. And so I'm enormously grateful to hear today so many of the solutions coming out, because the hunt should be for the solutions, to fund them, scale them, and roll them out globally to make sure that the world survives this transition that we're in through now to a much better information age that is more sustainable, secure, and superior to what we had before. Thank you.